She described how she is a stellar student, a cheerleader, and how she wanted to surprise her best friend with a poster. But to Judge Caprio, this was no excuse, because vandalism comes with a heavy price. From the moment Madison walked into that courtroom, something felt wrong. Her steps were careless, her eyes were distant, and her attitude carried a weight far heavier than her age. She did not look scared. She did not look sorry. She looked confident in the worst possible way, like she believed nothing could touch her. And that was the first sign that this case was about to turn into something much bigger than a simple teenage mistake. People often say kids do foolish things, but sometimes it is not the mistake that worries you. It is the pride behind it. It is the attitude that tells you a child is heading toward a path that could destroy them if no one stops them. That morning, Judge Caprio saw exactly that. He saw a young girl who thought rules were a joke. He saw a heart drifting toward trouble, and he knew he had to stop her before the world did it much harder. Her mother sat beside her, embarrassed and helpless. She kept whispering for Madison to behave, but Madison kept staring ahead as if the judge owed her an apology for making her show up. She chewed her gum loudly. She tapped her foot on the floor. She folded her arms with a sharp breath. Every movement screamed one thing: "I don't care." And that was the hook that grabbed the judge's attention. Judge Caprio had seen thousands of young people. Some cried. Some regretted. Some apologized with sincerity that touched the soul. But Madison was different. She carried a strange confidence, the kind that comes from never having faced real consequences. She walked in like a visitor, not like someone who had broken the law. She believed her good grades would protect her. She believed her cheerleading trophies would impress the judge. She believed her smile could fix everything. She was wrong, because in that room, respect mattered more than achievements. Humility mattered more than charm, and responsibility mattered more than excuses. Judge Caprio leaned forward and asked her gently why she did what she did. Madison shrugged. Not a soft shrug, a bold one, the kind that makes adults stop talking mid-sentence, the kind that says, "And what will you do about it?" It was a shrug that pulled the entire room into silence. People watched closely. Some shook their heads. Some covered their mouths. Some just stared, stunned by the boldness of a child who had no idea how serious her situation was becoming. Madison finally spoke, and her words were sharper than her shrug. It was just paint, nothing serious. That single sentence shifted the energy of the courtroom. It tightened the air. It made people gasp softly. It made her mother lower her head in shame, and it made Judge Caprio's eyes grow still, steady, and serious. Because just paint was not the real problem. The real problem was the lack of responsibility in her voice. The real problem was the disrespect hidden behind her confidence. The real problem was the dangerous belief that rules were optional. Judge Caprio calmly explained the cost of her actions, how much money it took to clean graffiti, how much time workers spent repairing the damage, and how many taxpayers paid for something they never caused. But Madison's expression didn't soften. Not at first. She seemed more annoyed than educated, more irritated than humbled. It was clear to everyone in the courtroom Madison didn't understand her mistake at all. That's when Judge Caprio changed his tone. Not angry, not loud, just firm. The kind of firm that shakes a young heart to its center. He told her that if she didn't learn responsibility now, the world would teach her later, with much harsher consequences. His words were gentle, but the meaning behind them was powerful, and even the adults listening felt the weight. Her mother began to speak next. Tears formed in her eyes as she explained how Madison had always been a good child, but had recently changed. She said Madison had started challenging rules, arguing more, and ignoring guidance. She admitted she did not know how to help her daughter anymore. The mother's voice trembled with sadness and hope that someone might finally reach the part of Madison she no longer could. Madison rolled her eyes again, and that was the moment Judge Caprio made his decision. He knew Madison did not need punishment. She needed awakening. She needed a moment she would remember. She needed a lesson that touched her pride, not her wallet. So he chose something deeply simple, yet deeply powerful. He ordered her to clean the wall she had painted, every inch of it, with her own hands. No shortcuts, no excuses, no attitude. And her mother would stand beside her to make sure she finished what she started. The courtroom fell silent. Even Madison froze. The shock on her face showed that reality had finally touched her. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. He told her that she must also write a reflection about the kind of person she wanted to become, because the version of herself she showed that day was not the version she should carry into adulthood. That final line hit her harder than the punishment. For the first time, her shoulders dropped. Her eyes lowered. Her confidence cracked. She wasn't a cheerful teenager anymore. She wasn't a bold rule breaker. She was a child finally understanding responsibility. And in that moment, the courtroom knew something powerful had happened. A mistake had been corrected. A dangerous attitude had been softened. A young girl had been guided before she lost her way. Sometimes justice is not about the punishment. Sometimes justice is about the lesson. And that day, Madison learned hers.
When Madison walked out of the courtroom that day, her steps were slower than before. The confidence she carried in like a shield had finally cracked. Her mother walked beside her with a mix of relief and exhaustion, as if she had been holding her breath for months and could finally let it out. But Madison didn't say a word. She didn't argue. She didn't roll her eyes. She stayed quiet, and that silence alone showed that Judge Caprio's words had pierced her heart. But silence after a lesson is not enough. Real change happens when the world gives you a chance to practice that lesson, and Madison was about to face that chance, one she could not avoid, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. The next morning, the truth hit her even harder. She had to clean the wall she vandalized. Not with her friends watching, not with music playing, not with laughter. She had to clean it with her own hands, in public, under the bright daylight where every person who walked by could see her mistake. For the first time, she felt the weight of her actions not as a joke, but as a responsibility. Her mother brought cleaning supplies, brushes, buckets, gloves, and heavy chemicals. Madison stared at them, and for a moment, her pride tried to return. She wanted to say something clever, something stubborn, something that would save her ego, but she couldn't. Judge Caprio's voice echoed in her mind. If you don't learn responsibility now, the world will teach you harder later. And she understood something. This was the easiest version of that lesson. She picked up the brush and started scrubbing. The paint was thicker than she expected. The wall was rougher than she imagined, and the work was slower than she thought. Her arms hurt, her back ached, her hands grew sore. And the more she scrubbed, the more the truth became clear. It is very easy to make a mess. It is very hard to clean one. Her mother sat on a nearby bench watching her quietly, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with hope. A mother's hope that her child was finally waking up from the storm she had been stuck in. Madison looked at her mother sometimes, and each time she felt a little more guilty, a little more humble, and a little more responsible. Throughout the morning, people walked by. Some looked confused, some looked disappointed. Some smiled kindly, understanding that this punishment was not cruelty, but guidance. Older people especially understood. They knew the value of such a lesson. They knew how dangerous a wrong attitude can be if it grows unchecked. One elderly woman stopped and told her gently, "You're doing the right thing, sweetheart." Those simple words broke a small piece of Madison's pride. She nodded softly. Another man walked by and said, "It takes courage to fix what you broke." That sentence reached the part of her heart that had always wanted to do better, even when her attitude tried to hide it. As hours passed, something inside her slowly changed. Her pride weakened. Her respect grew. Her heart softened. For the first time, she wasn't cleaning a wall. She was cleaning herself. She was washing away the attitude that had pushed her away from her mother. She was scrubbing away the anger that had made her ignore rules. She was removing the mess she had made, not just on the wall, but in her own life. Because sometimes you cannot fix your heart until your hands learn the weight of real work. By the time the wall was clean, Madison was exhausted. Sweat covered her forehead. Her arms were shaking, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. She looked at the clean wall, and for the first time she saw her mistake, not as a small act, but as a choice that affected others. Her mother walked over and hugged her tightly, not because the wall was clean, but because her daughter's attitude finally was. That evening, Madison sat on her bed to write the reflection Judge Caprio asked. At first, she struggled. Writing about your own mistakes is harder than any school assignment. But slowly, her heart opened, and the words began to flow. She wrote about being careless. She wrote about her pride. She wrote about ignoring the rules. She wrote about hurting her mother. And she wrote about wanting to be better, not because she was forced, but because she suddenly understood the value of being a good person. As she wrote, tears filled her eyes, not tears of fear, but tears of realization. She finally saw herself clearly, and sometimes seeing yourself honestly is the hardest and bravest thing a young person can do. Her mother read the reflection when she was done. She didn't say a word. She just pulled Madison close and held her, as if she were protecting the soft new version of her daughter that had finally emerged. But the journey wasn't over. A week later, they returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom. This time, Madison walked differently. No gum, no attitude, no crossed arms, no tapping feet. Her steps were slow, respectful, and careful. Her eyes didn't stare around the room with pride. Instead, they focused on the judge with genuine honesty. The courtroom noticed it immediately. Even strangers felt the difference in her presence. Judge Caprio greeted her kindly, but with the same firmness. He asked her if she completed her cleaning. She nodded with humility. He asked her if she wrote her reflection. She handed it to him with both hands, showing respect she never showed before. The judge read her reflection slowly. As he read, his face softened. He paused. He nodded. He looked at her with eyes that held both wisdom and kindness. Madison stood still, waiting not for her punishment, but for her lesson. The judge finally spoke. Madison, this is the girl I hope to meet. The girl who understands that responsibility shapes character. The girl who learns not from fear, but from understanding. Madison's eyes filled with tears, and her mother's did too. The judge continued, you made a mistake, but you chose to fix it, and that choice says more about you than your mistake ever will. The courtroom fell quiet. People listened as if the words were meant for them too. Then Judge Caprio said something that completed Madison's transformation. You have two paths in life. One path is easy, careless, and full of excuses. The other path is harder, but it leads to respect, strength, and a future you can be proud of. Today, you stepped onto the right path. Those words were the turning point, the moment that sealed the lesson, the moment Madison truly grew. Her mother thanked the judge, Madison thanked him too, with a voice full of emotion and honesty. As they left the courtroom, Madison didn't walk like the girl who came in. She walked like a young person who finally understood responsibility, kindness, and respect. A mistake turned into maturity. A punishment turned into wisdom. A teenager turned into someone stronger. Because sometimes the greatest lessons in life come from the smallest mistakes when they are corrected with the right heart.
The week after Madison's second court appearance felt different from anything she had ever experienced before. For the first time in her young life, she felt something new inside her, something steady, something quiet, something almost unfamiliar. It was responsibility. And like most important feelings, it didn't arrive loudly. It showed up slowly, gently, and honestly, through small moments that made her think deeply about the person she was becoming. Every day, she woke up earlier than before, not because someone forced her, but because she felt a strange desire to do things right. She cleaned her room without her mother asking. She helped set the table for dinner. She even did her homework before scrolling through her phone. These were small steps, but each step carried a tiny piece of change. And change always begins with the things no one sees. Her mother noticed immediately. She didn't say anything at first because she feared if she said too much, Madison might slip back into her old habits. But in her heart, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. A fragile kind of hope. The kind a parent feels when they see their child walking toward a better future. But change is never a straight line. It doesn't grow without tests. And Madison's biggest test came a few days later in the most unexpected way. One afternoon at school, While waiting for her ride, she saw another girl spray painting the back wall near the sports field. The girl laughed as she drew careless shapes across the bricks. Madison froze. It felt like she was looking at her old self. Brave on the outside, careless on the inside, blind to consequences. For a moment, Madison wanted to walk away and pretend she didn't see anything. She didn't want to get involved. She didn't want trouble. She didn't want to sound like a good girl. But then she remembered Judge Caprio's words. Your choices today decide the person you become tomorrow. She took a deep breath and walked toward the girl. Her hands were shaking a little, not because she was scared of the girl, but because she was scared of slipping back into a version of herself she no longer wanted to be. She spoke softly. You shouldn't do that. The girl laughed without turning around. Why do you care? Madison hesitated for a moment, but then she found her courage. Because I did the same thing, and I had to clean it. It wasn't fun. This time the girl stopped. She turned slowly and looked at Madison with surprise. You got in trouble? Madison nodded. Yes, big trouble. And it wasn't worth it. The girl stared at the wall, then at Madison, then back at the wall. Something in Madison's voice must have reached her. She sighed and lowered the spray can. You're right. I don't want to deal with all that. It was a small victory, a quiet moment, but it carried a powerful truth. Sometimes the best person to stop someone from making a mistake is someone who has already made that mistake themselves. When Madison got in the car, she didn't tell her mother what happened. She didn't need praise. She didn't need attention. She just felt good inside, good in a way that surprised her, because doing the right thing felt better than doing the easy thing, and that was the sign of real growth. But life wasn't done teaching her. Growth doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in many moments, and her next moment arrived at home. That evening, her mother sat down next to her on the couch. She held Madison's reflection paper, the same one she had shown Judge Caprio. Her mother took a deep breath and said, I read this again today. Madison felt her stomach drop slightly. She wondered if she had written something wrong. But her mother smiled, a soft, warm, emotional smile. I'm proud of you. Those 4 words hit her harder than any punishment ever had. It wasn't the pride you feel when you win a trophy. It wasn't the pride you feel when someone praises your grades. It was deeper, softer, the kind of pride that fills your heart and tells you that you're becoming someone worth admiring. Her mother continued, You're changing, Madison, and it's beautiful to see you try. Madison's eyes watered a little, not from sadness, but from the kind of emotion you can't fully describe. For months, she had been hiding behind attitude, pride, and anger. But now, for the first time, she felt seen. Not for her mistakes, but for her effort. And effort builds character. Effort builds respect. Effort builds the future. A few days later, Madison found out her class was organizing a community project. Students could choose between picking up trash in the park, helping in the school library, or painting a mural with approved supervision. A few weeks ago, she would have chosen painting without a second thought, but now she felt a tug towards something more meaningful. She chose the library. Quiet work, helpful work, work that required respect. Her teacher was surprised but pleased. Madison spent the entire afternoon sorting books, cleaning shelves, and helping younger students find what they needed. She felt calm doing it, almost peaceful, as if helping others was the missing piece she never knew she needed. But the true turning point came at the end of the school day. Her principal approached her with a gentle smile. I heard about your court case, she said softly. Madison felt a wave of embarrassment. She looked down. But the principal continued. I also heard about how you handled it. That takes maturity. Madison looked up slowly. Her heart warmed. You made a mistake, the principal said, but I'm proud you corrected it. Not everyone does. That night, Madison thought about everything. Her punishment, her reflection letter, the girl she stopped at school, the library project, her mother's proud smile, Judge Caprio's steady voice, she realized something powerful. Mistakes do not define you. What you do after them does. She sat on her bed and closed her eyes. She remembered how she felt when she first stood before Judge Caprio. Hard, defensive, careless. She remembered how she felt cleaning the wall. Tired, humbled, changed. And she remembered how she felt walking into the courtroom again. Softened, honest, ready to own her actions. The girl she once was no longer felt like her. She felt like someone she left behind, someone she had outgrown, someone she now understood with compassion, not pride. The next morning, Madison woke with a sense of purpose. She walked into the kitchen and hugged her mother tightly, surprising her. Her mother laughed softly and hugged her back, feeling her daughter's heart stronger than ever. As the days continued, something amazing happened. Madison became someone her teachers trusted more. Her classmates treated her differently. Her mother smiled more often. And Madison herself felt lighter, happier, calmer. Responsibility had become part of her. Respect had become part of her. Growth had become part of her. And all of it started with the moment she stood in front of a judge who refused to let her walk away unchanged. This wasn't the end of Madison's journey. It was the beginning of a new one. Because once a heart learns responsibility, it never forgets it. And Madison was now walking toward a future she could be proud of.
The weeks following Madison's transformation felt like a new chapter in her life. Every day carried a quiet sense of purpose, the kind that grows slowly but changes everything. And while she didn't always realize it, the people around her noticed the difference almost instantly. It wasn't just that she behaved better. It wasn't just that she followed rules. It was deeper than all of that. It was the way she carried herself, calmer, kinder, and more thoughtful than ever before. Her teachers, who once felt frustrated with her attitude, now smiled when they saw her participate, not with lazy interest, but with a sincere willingness to learn. Her classmates, who once rolled their eyes at her sarcastic comments, now found her friendly, warm, and surprisingly helpful. Even her younger brother, who once avoided her temper, now sat beside her more comfortably. Madison had changed. And change, when real, speaks louder than words. But every change in life comes with a choice to continue growing or to slip back into old ways. And deep inside, Madison knew she needed to protect this new part of herself. It wasn't enough to fix one mistake. It was important to stay on the right path. Then, one day, something unexpected happened, something that would bring her journey full circle. Her mother received a letter in the mail from the court. The letter stated that Madison needed to appear again for a short follow-up review. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a warning. It was simply a final check to see how she had progressed. When Madison read the letter, her heart tightened with both fear and hope. She wasn't afraid of trouble. She wasn't afraid of punishment. She was afraid of disappointing the judge who believed she could become better. That feeling alone showed how much she had grown. The night before her court review, Madison sat on her bed with a reflection paper beside her. She read it again, slowly, remembering the version of herself who wrote it, the girl who was scared, humbled, broken open, and finally honest. She held the paper against her chest for a moment, feeling grateful for everything it had taught her. Her mother knocked softly on her door and walked in. "Nervous?" she asked gently. "A little. I don't want him to think I didn't learn." Her mother smiled, touched by the sincerity in her daughter's voice. "He already knows you've changed, but tomorrow is your chance to show him how much." Madison hugged her mother tightly, and for the first time since all of this began, her hug wasn't seeking comfort. It was giving comfort, too. The next morning came quickly. As they drove to the courthouse, Madison kept taking slow breaths, trying to steady her thoughts. She looked out the window and noticed things she had never truly paid attention to before. The old trees, the quiet sidewalks, the people rushing to work, the world moving softly around her. She realized that, for the first time in a very long time, she felt connected to something bigger than herself. When they arrived at the courthouse, Madison held her mother's hand as they walked in. But this time, she didn't hold it because she was scared. She held it because she wanted to enter the room with respect, humility, and gratitude in her heart. The courtroom felt different to her now. On her first day, it felt intimidating and annoying. Today, it felt important, meaningful, like a place where people went to understand right and wrong, not just punishment and rules. When Judge Caprio walked in, Madison stood up straight, not because she had to, but because she wanted to show respect. Judge Caprio recognized her immediately, and a gentle expression crossed his face. Not pride, not pity, something else, something warm and thoughtful. "Good morning, Madison," he said softly. "Good morning, Your Honor," she replied with calm honesty. Her mother sat down behind her, watching with quiet emotion. Judge Caprio opened a file, glanced at it for a moment, and then looked at Madison again. He didn't start with questions. He didn't start with formalities. He started with something far more meaningful. "You look different," he said. Madison's eyes softened. "I feel different." Those words carried a truth the entire courtroom could feel. Judge Caprio nodded. "Tell me what you learned from all this." Madison took a breath, gathering her thoughts. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She spoke from her heart. "I learned that a mistake doesn't make you a bad person, but ignoring that mistake can. I learned that my attitude was hurting people I love. I learned that rules are not meant to limit me, they're meant to protect me. And I learned that respect is something I should give before I expect anyone to give it back." Her voice trembled a little, but it wasn't fear, it was honesty. The judge listened carefully, his expression softening. He could hear the maturity in her words, he could feel the sincerity behind them, and he could see the difference in her eyes, the difference only someone who has truly grown can carry. "Did you help anyone else along the way?" he asked gently. Madison nodded. "A girl at school was doing graffiti. I told her not to, and she stopped. I didn't want her to go through what I did." The judge smiled for the first time, a real smile, a warm smile. "That," he said, "is the sign of real change." Madison lowered her eyes, tears quietly gathering. Her mother wiped her face behind her. Judge Caprio continued. "Madison, when you first came here, I saw a young girl with potential, but also with a dangerous attitude. Today, I see a young lady with humility, kindness, and strength. You didn't just fix a wall, you fixed yourself. And that is something many adults still struggle to do." The courtroom grew quiet again, touched by the power of his words. Then, Judge Caprio leaned forward with a gentle expression. "I have nothing more to punish, nothing more to correct. You've already become the person I hoped you would become." Madison felt her heart swell with relief and pride. The judge wasn't finished. "Now your responsibility is simple. Continue being this person. Continue helping others. Continue respecting the people around you. If you do that, you won't just avoid trouble, you will inspire others to change too." He paused, then added softly, "And I hope you never forget that this moment was only the beginning." Madison nodded, unable to speak. Her emotions were too strong, too warm, too deep. Judge Caprio closed her file, set it aside, and said, "Madison, your case is officially dismissed. You may go, with my respect." Those last three words hit her harder than anything she heard throughout the entire journey. With my respect. Respect was the one thing she didn't have on her first day. Respect was the thing she earned with her actions. Respect was the final gift of her transformation. As Madison and her mother walked out of the courtroom for the last time, something incredible happened. People in the benches smiled at her. Not because they felt sorry, not because they were judging her, but because they could feel the change inside her. Respect attracts respect. Growth attracts admiration. Kindness attracts kindness. And that is how a simple mistake turned into the lesson that shaped her future. If Madison's journey touched your heart, and if you believe every young person deserves a chance to learn and grow, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice helps bring more real stories of change, justice, and second chances to the world.